Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rising Sign Astrology. Today, we're taking an expansive journey in the realm of Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, blessings, and higher purpose. We'll explore its mythological roots, its symbolism across cultures, and why it's considered such a benevolent and guiding force in both Western and Vedic astrology. Jupiter is the great teacher, the bringer of wisdom, and the cosmic guru. It shows us where we grow through faith, knowledge, and alignment with our higher truth. In this video, we'll break down Jupiter's connection to spiritual growth, prosperity, and divine timing, and then we'll explore what it means when Jupiter shows up in each of the 12 houses in the chart. I mainly use Western whole sign house system in my interpretations, but I'm also deeply inspired by Vedic, so you'll notice some of that woven into the mix when it's called for. And if you're curious about how Jupiter influences your purpose, your belief systems, and the area of life where you're meant to grow, then this is the video for you. So as always, if you enjoy the content and you want to hear more, please subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so you never miss another upload. Likes and comments do go a long way to support the channel and help more astrology lovers find the content. So let's dive in and discover the world of Jupiter. Just about luck and abundance. It does have deep roots in some of the oldest systems in the world. In Roman mythology, Jupiter was the king of the gods. He was a thunderbolt wielding sky god who ruled the heavens with wisdom as well as authority. And as the highest deity in the Roman pantheon, he held court atop Mount Olympus, making final judgments, enforcing law, and really just protecting the social order. He was the god of the sky, of thunder and storms, but also of justice, morality, and ultimately spiritual truth. When the ancients pictured a bearded patriarch sitting on a throne of clouds and casting thunderbolts with a wave of his hand, that was Jupiter. He was both revered as well as feared. But the story of Jupiter doesn't start with Rome. The Romans borrowed generously from Greek mythology, and Jupiter is essentially their adaptation of Zeus, the head of the Greek gods. And Zeus's origin story is anything but mild. It's a saga of rebellion and breaking of karmic cycles. Zeus was the youngest son of Kronos, the equivalent of Saturn, right? He was a tyrant god who, in his paranoia, swallowed all of his children at birth to prevent them from overthrowing him eventually. Just as he had done to his own father before him. But Zeus was hidden away at birth by his mother, who could no longer bear the destruction that was happening. So once grown, Zeus returned, forced Kronos to regurgitate his siblings, and led a war in a cosmic battle that ended with the old regime of fear, repression, stagnation, Kronos Saturn, being overthrown. Zeus didn't just take the throne, he restructured the entire landscape. He ushered in a new order that was based not on control or suppression, again Saturn, but on truth, expansion, and freedom. His victory symbolized the liberation of consciousness and the triumph of wisdom over fear. Now, Zeus, like Jupiter, isn't without flaws. He was impulsive, passionate, and often got tangled in mortal affairs. But symbolically, he represented growth. He was the god of vision, prophecy, and truth, the one who carried the symbol of protection and power with him. So just like Jupiter in astrology, he was the promise of something greater, the ability to see beyond the present moment and imagine a better and more expansive future. And this is what Jupiter brings when he hits a certain part of your chart. Now, when we speak of Jupiter in the astrological sense, we're not just talking about this benevolent sky god. We're invoking the archetype of the liberator, the teacher, the guru, the one who breaks old systems and expands what's possible. Jupiter is growth. He is truth as well. And some of this is seen in the Vedic tradition. And here, Jupiter takes an even more sacred role. He's known as the guru of the devas, the gods, but he isn't a ruler in the same way Zeus is. He's more of a spiritual guide, a teacher, and a holder of sacred wisdom. He's the one that would bring light to your mind and clarity to your soul and help you balance, the material with the spiritual. So while he's less about, the Roman and Greek version of somebody sitting in the sky with thunderbolts, he's more about consciousness, although just as powerful in, this tradition as well. What's fascinating is that across all of these systems, Jupiter is consistently linked to a number of different themes, such as higher knowledge, truth, justice, growth, expansion, and faith. Jupiter isn't just about good luck. He is the one who gives us the courage to believe in a bigger story, a higher path, and a more meaningful life. So that's why when Jupiter moves through your chart, it doesn't just drop gifts at your feet. It teaches you how to step into greater alignment with your truth, your purpose, and the abundance that's waiting for you. Now, in a more physical sense, Jupiter plays an almost celestial guardian to the planet Earth. Because Jupiter's impact isn't just symbolic, right? This planet has a massively important role in the very structure and survival of life here on Earth. Jupiter, for those who don't know, is absolutely enormous in size. It's more than 11 times the size of Earth. And it's so massive that you could actually fit every other planet inside of it and still have room. So, because of this immense size, it also carries an immense gravity and a gravitational pull. So, Jupiter acts almost like a planetary bodyguard or cosmic vacuum cleaner that's constantly pulling in or deflecting debris in outer space that might otherwise head straight for Earth. And astronomers believe that without Jupiter, Earth would have suffered far more frequent and catastrophic collisions with comets and asteroids. So it's likely that Jupiter is one of the key reasons we've had relative stability here, which allowed for life to grow and evolve. Now, that protective quality, the shielding of Earth from destruction, really aligns nicely with the astrological symbolism. Jupiter represents grace, protection, and good fortune. And in some really physical, observable ways, he's been watching over the Earth and protecting it for a great number of years. But Jupiter doesn't just guard, it also orbits, and it does so in a very slow, steady rhythm that takes about 12 years to complete one full journey around the sun, meaning it spends roughly 1 year in each zodiac sign. So unlike, the more personal planets like Mercury or Mars, which move very quickly and tend to bring and impact short-term events, Jupiter's movement is a little bit more far-reaching. And from Earth, Jupiter is also one of the brightest objects in the sky. Like, you can go outside on a clear night without a telescope and clearly see Jupiter. It certainly stands out. Now, as we look at the astrology, Jupiter is known as the Great Benefic, and for good reason. It's the planet that brings hope, blessings, growth, and expansion into our lives. But Jupiter isn't about blind optimism. He represents a sacred kind of growth, and the kind that happens when you align with the truth and when you trust in the universe or God or whatever you believe in and say yes to the journey that your soul signed up for when it chose to come here. Now, Jupiter rules 2 signs, and those 2 signs have very different flavors, but they both tend to reflect the expansive nature and wisdom of Jupiter. The first is Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is a fire sign, and it's known as a scholar or an explorer. And this is Jupiter's outward expression, right? Restless, curious, a real hunger for wisdom, known as maybe the luckiest sign in the zodiac. It's the part of us that wants to roam the world, explore, ask the big questions, and really understand the truth of everything. Now, the other sign that Jupiter rules is Pisces. Now, Pisces is a water sign. It's known as the dreamer or the mystic. And this is Jupiter's more inward expression, right? Of the compassionate empath or the artist who channels inspiration from the divine or the spiritual journeyer. And through Pisces, Jupiter teaches us to trust what we can't see and ultimately believe in the higher power that's guiding everything. In terms of exaltation, Jupiter is known to be exalted in Cancer, meaning it functions at its highest potential in this area. Cancer is a nurturing and protective water sign. So, why does Jupiter function so well here? Well, because Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is connected to home, emotional security, intuition, and the sacred bond of family. So, Jupiter in Cancer blends the best of both worlds in the sense that he brings wisdom with compassion as well as faith with a level of emotional intelligence that you might not see in other signs. And of course, he always brings abundance. So in this sign, Jupiter becomes even wiser. And the ability here is to, in this archetype, guide the family or be that spiritual protector of the family. And it brings blessings to any areas within this theme, such as motherhood, home, ancestral healing, or, just deep emotional support. This is where Jupiter is said to be at its most generous, giving, and even protective. Now, when we talk about detriment, on the flip side, Jupiter is considered to be in detriment when placed in Gemini and Virgo, which are both ruled by Mercury. Now, the reason for this is that in Gemini, Jupiter's expansive worldview really clashes with Gemini's need for short bursts of knowledge or mental stimulation and variety. Jupiter is the big picture, and Gemini tends to get caught up in the details. Now, speaking of details, the detriment is also found in Virgo. And the reason is that Jupiter's grand ideals start to feel somewhat limited by Virgo's need for precision or practicality or perfection. Some would say nitpicking. So while Jupiter says, let's have faith and trust the process, Virgo is the one that would be like, yeah, I have faith, but let me check it a few more times. It's not really faith. So this doesn't mean that Jupiter can't still offer up gifts when it's in these signs or transiting these signs, but it does mean that the energy tends to be more filtered or more analytical and less free flowing. It's like trying to squeeze a giant hot air balloon through a very tiny window. It's possible, but it requires a little bit more effort, if that makes sense. Lastly, let's talk about Jupiter in fall, and it's in its fall in Capricorn, which means it has to work its hardest here to express its natural gifts. And you probably know why, right? Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is about boundaries and structure and restriction, basically the complete opposite of Jupiter's, vibe. So when Jupiter is in Capricorn, growth tends to come through discipline, patience, and a lot of hard work, which isn't bad. It's just that the expansion is slower and a bit more deliberate. And while it can be incredibly rewarding, because what's built here is often built to stand the test of time, it's less Jupiterian in the way that it tends to manifest. It's not as, spiritually rewarding. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So, taking a step back, I would say at its core, Jupiter governs everything that stretches beyond us, right? Beyond what's known. He rules things like spirituality and religion, higher education, knowledge, rules over foreign travel or different cultural experiences. He's connected to any type of moral or philosophical belief systems and is the ruler of abundance and generosity, teaching and guidance. And when Jupiter transits through a particular house in your chart, it tends to be like the cosmic Santa Claus in a way, right? It illuminates an area that's fresh with potential with its expansive energy and says, okay, there's more here for you. Let's grow and do so rapidly, right? Because it's a 1 year transit and it tends to bring a lot of positive things to the area of the chart that it transits in that time. But there is a deeper truth here about Jupiter, and that is that it doesn't just hand out rewards, but it offers opportunities. And it's up to you to walk through the door. So things aren't going to just happen. And if you aren't aligned with it or putting the work in, Jupiter may bring blessings that are present and expansive and amazing during its time when it's in your sign. But if you don't maintain that, it could disappear when Jupiter leaves that area of the chart. Jupiter can also make problems larger as well, because Jupiter tends to expand whatever it's touching. If Jupiter is hitting a part of your chart or touching on something that, you know, isn't in support of your highest self and your highest growth potential, he can make problems bigger. And that's not to hurt you. That's because he just knows where it's going to go. And ultimately, that is not right for you. So he's going to bring a resolution to that quicker, right, than maybe another planet would. But like I said, Jupiter's blessings are not always guaranteed. They tend to be tied to your ability to see the bigger picture and act from a place of faith in that area. It's ultimately a planet that rewards the individuals who show up with honesty and courage. And when you align your purpose and give freely and trust the process and do all of these great things, that's when Jupiter, bestows the gifts upon you and responds in kind. And sometimes it's in ways that are even bigger than you could even imagine. And like I said, it can also expose areas that are stunting your expansion. And it can magnify the issues or imbalances or blind spots so that you could move forward in a way that's more aligned with where you're ultimately meant to be. So when Jupiter crosses a part of your chart, you really want to pay attention to that. It really is like a message coming through saying, hey, there's more for you here, and if you're willing to rise to meet it, you're going to be blessed with some amazing things in this area. Now, in terms of how to work with Jupiter's energy, I would say that he's best when you actively engage with what he's about and what he stands for. So if you're open to growth, he's going to expand whatever he touches. So the advice would be to lean into the opportunities that may feel like they're stretching you beyond your comfort zone, because that's what Jupiter's here to do. Also, be prepared to ask the big questions. Be a student. Jupiter's about wisdom. He's the guru. So read and study. And, if you're pursuing something, whether that's academic, spiritual, or philosophical, seek the wisdom, and Jupiter will reward you in that area. Jupiter's about trust, so faith is always key. And be generous, because Jupiter governs abundance. This is not about a scarcity mindset or restriction. And Jupiter's energy really flows best when it's about that abundance and that is shared with others. So give freely of whatever you're being called to do in that area, whether it's time or advice or support or resources, and you'll see that it comes back to you, more than onefold. Lastly, I would say, because Jupiter amplifies what you focus on, the more you practice gratitude and recognize your blessings, the more Jupiter will magnetize them. All right, well, those are just some quick tips. Let's do a brief overview of how Jupiter expresses itself through each of the four elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And we'll also do a brief overview of how Jupiter's energy plays out in each of the zodiac signs, whether in transit or it occupies within the natal chart. Jupiter in fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, is all about inspired action and bold growth. When Jupiter moves through fire signs, it ignites an adventurous, passionate, and even fearless drive for his expansion. These placements are natural risk takers who tend to thrive when they follow their instincts and pursue things that excite them. In Aries, Jupiter fuels bold leaps and an entrepreneurial spirit. Growth tends to come from initiating action and leading with confidence. In Leo, Jupiter amplifies its charisma, creativity, and leadership qualities, often bringing luck through forms of self-expression, public visibility, and just a commanding presence. Now, in Sagittarius, its home sign, Jupiter is at its most powerful, expanding the horizons through travel, philosophy, and a deep quest for meaning. Here, growth tends to flow naturally through big visions, a form of unshakable faith, and a sense of divine purpose in everything they do. Now, Jupiter in the Earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, tends to emphasize a more grounded expansion and really a vision of long-term growth through that expansion. So what I mean by that is when Jupiter moves through Earth signs, its energy becomes a bit more practical, disciplined, and focused on the tangible results. These placements tend to value effort, structure, and consistency, believing that true growth always takes time and must be backed by hard work and intention. So in Taurus, Jupiter brings abundance, but through the senses, with luck often showing up in things such as finance or comforts, and a slow but steady, prosperity that is always going to be rooted in some form of stability, right? Taurus. So now in Virgo, where Jupiter is in its detriment, as we covered, growth tends to come through service, refinement, and a mastery of the details. So it's certainly less flamboyant here, and this placement excels when it's focused on helping others or improving systems in general through that, maniacal focus on details. Lastly, in Capricorn, Jupiter is in its fall. We discussed this, but it can be incredibly powerful here as well when it's combined with discipline and ambition. Here, the expansion is more about leaving a legacy, and success will be earned through careful planning and perseverance and a deep commitment to building something that lasts, which Jupiter can help with. Now, Jupiter in the air signs of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius is all about mental expansion and growth socially. These placements thrive on curiosity and communication and connection. Growth comes from exchange of ideas, exploring new perspectives, and building networks. In Gemini, Jupiter fuels that intellectual curiosity and sharp wit and expands it much more, right? So anything related to expansion around learning or storytelling or their social circles tends to come to bear. Luck often comes through writing and teaching and media, or, being a networker or connector of people and information in general. In Libra, Jupiter brings charm, harmony, and grace, enhancing all of its relationships, enhancing its diplomatic qualities, and the ability to bridge the gap of differences between different folks. So growth is found here through their partnerships, their aesthetics, and really, how they balance their fair-minded approach. In Aquarius, Jupiter takes on a more visionary edge, I would say. It sparks innovation and rebellion, and it really is a humanitarian thinker. And here, expansion tends to come through more unconventional paths, whether that be activism or aligning with communities that share a higher ideal. Lastly, Jupiter in water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, centers on more emotional and spiritual expansion. These placements grow through intuition, empathy, and deep inner connection, often guided by feeling rather than logic. In Cancer, where Jupiter is exalted, growth comes through emotional intelligence, a nurturing energy, and strong family or ancestral roots. Blessings tend to arrive through their home life or caregiving or creating a safe, loving space for the people they care about. In Scorpio, Jupiter brings profound transformation and tends to expand one's capacity for psychological depth or intimacy or the ability to experience transformation and rebirth. Here, growth is often intense, but it is always empowering. Lastly, in Pisces, one of Jupiter's home signs, as we talked about, the energy really becomes mystical, almost transcendent, and expansion flows through this individual's spiritual practice or their creativity or just their compassion in dealing with people. This placement here tends to open the door to modes of divine inspiration, a very active dream life, and just the beauty of surrendering to the cosmos and having faith. Now let's explore Jupiter in your chart. Now that we've covered the mythology, the astronomy, the astrological traits, and how to consciously work with the Jupiterian energy, let's make it about you, right? So in this section, we're going to explore what Jupiter means when it lands in each one of the 12 houses, and also how it acts when it transits through those houses as well. So you can check where it is in your birth chart natally, as well as whatever Jupiter transit you have running at the time that you're listening to this video. Each house represents a different area of your life, from career, relationships, and money to spiritual purpose and more. So we're going to go through all of them. And I just ask you, think about where Jupiter is in your chart, or where it's currently moving, because that is the area that you're being asked by Jupiter to either dream bigger or grow into your highest self. So let's dive in. We begin with one of Jupiter's most personal placements, the first house, where growth starts with you. This is about expanding your identity, amplifying your presence, and stepping into the world with confidence. Jupiter in the first house, whether it's part of your natal chart or transiting, is like the universe turning a spotlight on you and asking, are you ready to take up space? This placement is about personal expansion in every sense of the word, from your identity to your worldview, to your confidence, to your physical energy, and the way you walk into a room. It can even expand you from a physical perspective as well. So that's one thing to be cognizant of. The first house governs the self, how you present yourself, how others perceive you, and how you initiate action within the world. So when Jupiter, the planet of abundance, optimism, and growth, enters this arena, things start to feel bigger, more energized, and full of possibility. If you were born with Jupiter in your first house, you're someone who likely exudes a natural warmth or enthusiasm that tends to draw others in. People might describe you as lucky or magnetic, or someone who always seems to bounce back no matter the circumstance. There's often an inner belief in your own potential. Even if you struggle with self-doubt at times, you tend to keep the bigger picture in mind. So you may find that opportunities seem to find you, and that you happen to be in the right place at the right time more often than not. For example, you might stumble into career breakthroughs by a chance encounter, or receive help from mentors just when you need it most. This placement often brings larger-than-life personalities, sometimes even literally, as Jupiter can increase body size or presence. So you might be naturally expressive, or have a booming voice, or a big laugh, or a confident style that just makes people remember you. Others might come to you for advice, or encouragement, or even inspiration. You might gravitate towards roles where you can teach, lead, and uplift others, whether that's as a coach, motivational speaker, artist, or even someone who simply brings lightness to heavy environments around them. However, because Jupiter expands whatever it touches, the challenges can include being overly optimistic or overly promising, over-promising, under-delivering in certain circumstances, or a propensity to bite off more than you can chew at times. You might just assume things will always work out because they always do, which can lead to a lack of follow-through or at times trouble with boundaries. There can also be issues with indulgence. So spending too much, eating too much, or constantly chasing the next thrill without grounding your vision in practical steps. Now, when Jupiter transits your first house, it coincides with a personal rebirth of some sort. This transit typically kicks off a brand new 12-year cycle of growth, and it feels like the universe is saying, okay, you've been waiting, now let's go. It's a period where you're more visible, more magnetic, and more likely to attract positive attention or new opportunities, especially if you've been laying the groundwork in the previous months or years. It's a time where you may feel more adventurous, more inclined to say yes to life, or finally ready to step into a new chapter with even greater confidence. This could manifest in a variety of ways. You might suddenly find yourself the center of attention in social or professional settings, being invited to speak, to lead, or just represent something important. It's a time where you may want to update your look, get in better shape, or make a bold style change that aligns more with who you've become. For some, this is a time to rebrand entirely, whether that's launching a new business, changing your public image, or embracing a different lifestyle that better reflects who you are. Others may feel the call to travel or to return to school or explore personal development through things such as therapy, spiritual study, or coaching. Relationships during this time of a Jupiter transit also shift because you're radiating more confidence and more purpose at this time. And because of this, new romantic or new professional connections tend to blossom naturally. People are drawn to your optimism and sense of direction at this time. But again, the key is to stay grounded. Jupiter will expand whatever energy you're putting out. So if you're aligned with your values, this can be a beautiful time of personal breakthrough. But if you're lost or scattered, it can also amplify the ego, impatience, or any themes of escapism. Ultimately, Jupiter in the first house, whether natally or by transit, is a call to grow into your best, most expansive self. Whether natal or transiting, it's an invitation to believe in your path, express your truth more fully, and lead with integrity, faith, and generosity. It's not just about being more, it's about becoming more of who you really are. Now we move into the second house, where Jupiter expands your sense of value, both materially and internally. This is where abundance grows through self-worth, resources, and aligning with what truly matters to you. Jupiter in the second house is a placement that speaks directly to your relationship with value, both the tangible kind, like money and possessions, and the intangible kind, like self-worth and personal integrity. The second house governs how you earn, what you own, what you value, and how secure you feel within the physical world. So when Jupiter, the planet of expansion, optimism, and abundance, enters this house, either at birth or by transit, it brings the potential for real material growth, but also a deeper transformation around what value truly means to you. If you were born with Jupiter in the second house, there's often a natural confidence when it comes to money or your earning potential. Even if you don't start out wealthy, you'll likely carry an internal belief that you'll always be provided for, or that you can figure out how to generate whatever it is that you'll need. This placement often brings financial luck, or at least a talent for turning knowledge or skills into tangible resources. You may thrive in roles connected to business, finance, education, or even entrepreneurship, especially when your work feels aligned with your values. People with natal Jupiter in the second often operate from a mindset of abundance. They're generous by nature, whether it's with money, their time, or support, and they tend to believe that what they give will somehow come back around to them. This generous spirit can make them great friends and respected colleagues, but it can also create challenges with excess. So there may be a tendency to overindulge in luxury or to spend money as fast as it comes in, fueled by that unwavering belief that there will always be more. More is always going to show up. Why wouldn't it? So the lesson here is moderation, making sure that your financial decisions are guided by your deeper sense of purpose rather than just fleeting desires. Now, when Jupiter transits your second house, it opens up a window for financial and personal growth. This is often a time when you might see a raise, land a new job, launch a side hustle, or start monetizing a skill that's been dormant. You may feel more confident asking for what you're worth or investing in your own development, whether that's hiring a coach, signing up for a class, or finally launching that passion project you've been kicking around in the back of your mind. On a deeper level, this transit can radically shift how you value yourself. You might begin to let go of any limiting beliefs about what you deserve and start claiming a more empowered narrative around your earning power and potential. But Jupiter expands everything, including your spending. And it's not uncommon to experience a surge in income alongside a sudden desire to upgrade your life. New clothes, better furniture, a new car, lavish dinners, etc. So while this can be a fun and celebratory phase, it's also important to stay connected to your long-term financial goals at this time and your inner sense of what truly matters. I've seen people with a Jupiter second house transit get enormous raises, but then spend just as lavishly. And maybe a year or so later, they find themselves at a lower pay grade again, saying, what did I do with all that money? So if you chase material abundance without grounding in it, you might find yourself wealthier on paper, but also feeling somewhat hollow after the fact. Now, Jupiter in the second is not just about making money. It's about becoming someone who knows their worth. If the eighth house is how other people value you, the second house is how you value yourself. And Jupiter here teaches that abundance doesn't just start in your bank account. It starts in your belief system. So whether this placement is natal or by transit, it's going to be a reminder that financial expansion and self-worth are deeply intertwined. And the more you honor your talents, trust your value, and act in alignment with your integrity, the more the universe tends to rise up and reward you. Next, Jupiter enters the third house, where your mind takes precedence. Jupiter in the third brings expansion to how you think, learn, and communicate. This is the house that governs the mind in action. So your thoughts, conversations, writing style, your social interactions, and your everyday connections are found here. It also relates to siblings, neighbors, and your local environment. So when Jupiter, the planet of growth and opportunity, lands here, either by birth or by transit, it lights up your intellectual world, encouraging you to express yourself more freely, connect with the world more widely, and to see everyday life as full of meaning and potential. Now, if you were born with Jupiter in the third house, you likely have a mind that's always seeking to grow. You likely love learning for the sake of learning, constantly reading, teaching, talking, or mentally exploring new ideas. People with Jupiter in the third natally are the type of person that would go to bed, but then scroll through, reel after reel, Wikipedia article after Wikipedia article, and just absorb as much information and knowledge as they can. And your communication style is probably one that is tainted with optimism, curiosity, and persuasiveness. You tend to be someone who others enjoy listening to. So whether you're chatting with friends, writing an article, or giving a presentation, you have a distinct knack for making ideas feel accessible. You make the mundane inspiring, or at a very minimum, entertaining. So you might be someone that has a gift for storytelling or just a strong presence in areas like media, sales, marketing, education, or public speaking. And you're probably someone who can connect the dots very quickly, being able to link ideas or people in very creative ways and ultimately seeing the big picture where others may get stuck in the weeds. Because the third house rules siblings, sibling relationships may also play an important role in your life as well as your development. And it's not uncommon for people with this placement to maintain very, very strong bonds with their brothers or sisters or even childhood friends throughout their lives. And they tend to take on an almost mentor-like role with their siblings and within their family as a whole. However, with Jupiter's tendency to amplify, the challenges here can involve talking too much, promising more than you can deliver, or trying to do too many things at once. You might get caught in a cycle of mental overstimulation, jumping from one idea to the next without ever really grounding any one thing in action. Now, the key to overcoming this is to focus your mind with intention. So when you channel your ideas into something purposeful, like a writing project or a teaching role, or even a business plan, Jupiter's influence here allows you to create real momentum and real impact, but it needs to be channeled. Now, when Jupiter transits your third, it's not very different. Your mental energy does go through a noticeable shift at this time. And it tends to be a time when your voice carries further and your mind feels clearer, or you feel more inspired, or just eager to share what you know. It may be a time where you're pulled to speak or teach or write or just create content that reflects your worldview and your ideas. People that have Jupiter transiting their third house, I often see, they become a content creator, or they start a YouTube channel or an Instagram page, or, a lot of times like marketers, sometimes marketers just have Jupiter in the third, but like I've noticed people in the marketing and creative fields, when they have Jupiter transiting their third, it tends to be a time where like there's a large campaign launch, or they're working on that throughout the year and it comes to culmination. Those are pretty common ways that I've seen that come about. So if you have Jupiter transiting your third, keep that in mind, because it's a great time to start any of those things, whether it's a blog or a podcast, or just becoming more vocal on social media in general. Anything that allows you to communicate on a larger scale. And if you do that at this time, people are more likely to hear you and be moved by what you say. Now, this transit often brings about new learning opportunities. You might enroll in a class or pick up a new skill or hobby, or just reconnect with some long lost curiosity that really inspires you and mentally engages you. It's also a period when your local environment expands, right? The third house is your local neighborhood, and you may find yourself taking more short trips, strengthening relationships with neighbors, or discovering new connections closer to home. I know when I had Jupiter transiting my third house, my son was in school at that time, and I was just back and forth all day, dropping him off, picking him up, soccer practice, things of that sort. I felt like I was always in the car. So you may experience something similar to that. Now, it's also a time where relationships with siblings can get better and evolve. It could lead to healing old wounds, or if things are great already, simply deepening a pre-existing strong bond. Just remember that, as always, Jupiter expands whatever is already present. So if your mind is scattered or negative, it can amplify that feeling. But if you're focused and aligned on positivity, this transit can elevate your ability to communicate in ways that inspire and connect for the greater good. Because the third house rules so many different things and is known as the drunk draw of, the zodiac, my advice would be consciously choose one or two areas of growth within the third house and go deep on those rather than try to do everything at once, because there will be an urge to try to do it all at this time. Now, at its core, Jupiter in the third house is about honoring your voice and trusting what you have to say, and that what you say matters. So whether you were born with this placement or it's just passing through now, the message is clear. Your words can move people, and your ideas can open up minds. So when you use your voice with intention and authenticity, it becomes a vehicle for true expansion. And that's not just for you, but for everyone that it touches and reaches. Now we move into the fourth house, the sacred space of home, roots, and emotional security. Personally, I think to have Jupiter natally in the fourth house might be the luckiest placement of all. It's close to the second or the 10th. All three are phenomenal. But Jupiter in the fourth brings growth to the most important part of your life, right? The heart of your life. It's your home. It's your emotional foundations and your sense of inner security. This is the most private corner of the birth chart. Because it's the bottom of the chart, it's often hidden from public view. Yet, it's deeply influential in shaping who you are. So when Jupiter, the planet of expansion, protection, and wisdom, enters this realm, either natally or by transit, it invites you to grow from the inside out. It doesn't just want to expand your physical space, although it can do that. But it wants to nourish your soul and strengthen your roots. Ultimately, it's here to help you feel immensely supported, but from within. So, if you were born with Jupiter in the fourth house, your emotional world is likely very rich and very resilient. You may have grown up in a home that valued things such as culture, education, or even spirituality. Perhaps you had one parent who instilled in you a deep sense of faith and emotional steadiness. And even if your childhood had its challenges, you probably developed an inner optimism that things always work out in the end. You may feel a deep connection to your ancestry, your homeland, or your family traditions. And you're someone who tends to carry a protective or nurturing quality, especially within your private spaces, such as a home. So, this placement often brings blessings through home and family, or at least meaningful life lessons that become resources to you over time. You might naturally have a strong desire to create a beautiful, welcoming home, something that's a sanctuary where others feel safe and feel cared for. And many people with Jupiter here are drawn to careers in real estate, interior design, or just an individual like entrepreneurial business that's either like you work from home or it's a family business. So people with this placement are very generous within their space, and there can be a tendency to overextend as well, whether that be emotionally, financially, or physically, especially when trying to create the quote perfect home or take on too much for your family. So because Jupiter expands whatever it touches, you know, you'll have this natural inclination to try to make your family life and your home as comfortable and perfect as it can be for your family, which isn't a bad thing, but it's something to be cognizant of. Now, when Jupiter transits your fourth house, it often marks a turning point in your domestic life. You may feel the urge at this time to move to a bigger or more meaningful home, or to start a family, or to renovate your living space in some way. This is a very, very common transit for moving, large scale renovations or improvements to an existing home, or just strengthening the emotional atmosphere, if that makes sense. It's a time where your focus could turn inward, and what matters most becomes the quality of that inner emotional life, not just how things look on the outside. This could be a time when you reconnect with your roots and explore your family lineage, or have a desire to have healing conversations, if needed, with your parents, and address any type of ancestral issues or trauma that may have been lurking beneath the surface and are unresolved. So it's often a time because of that where people start therapy or begin a spiritual practice, or realize that the key to feeling secure is that steady foundation, not necessarily materialism. Now, this transit can also bring a literal abundance through property or through land or through family inheritance. But the deeper invitation is to build a sense of home that reflects who you truly are. For some, this does look like buying their dream home or moving to a place that feels spiritually aligned, or simply, going from a smaller apartment to a larger apartment, or going from renting to owning their own home. Like, all of these are very common themes. For others, it's about finally feeling safe enough to rest and receive love and lay down roots after years of instability or constantly moving. Jupiter here encourages you to trust that home can be a place of expansion and it's not a place of limitation. Ultimately, it's a space where you grow and feel at ease and secure. And it's not just about productivity. When I was growing up, my mother has Jupiter in the fourth house natally, and she always stressed that no matter how crazy the world is outside and all of the tensions, that the moment her children got home, she wanted that home to be a safe place for them. And we weren't rich, we weren't millionaires, we didn't have, a big, gorgeous home. We had a nice home. But it was the emotional underpinnings of that placement that made her stress that. And it's something that I've tried to carry as well. But, as I've said, with all Jupiter placements, there is a risk of excess on the downside. So that could look like idealizing your family or idealizing your past, or maybe pouring too much energy into your home or caretaking, or stretching yourself too thin trying to make everything at home feel perfect. So the key is to let your inner guide sort of determine your choices, because Jupiter doesn't ask you to create a fantasy home. It's asking you to trust that home can be real and a source of strength, love, and healing no matter where it is. So whether you're born with Jupiter in the fourth or moving through this transit now, the message is very clear, and it's that true abundance starts at the roots. It starts at home, and it grows from emotional safety and that deep sense of belonging, not only to yourself, but to your family, to your past, to your place in the world. And when you invest in your home and your inner sanctuary, the rest of your life then has room to flourish. And that's what Jupiter is trying to bring here. Okay, now let's move into the energy of Jupiter in the fifth house. So, Jupiter in the fifth house is a placement that radiates joy, creativity, and heartfelt expression. This is the part of the chart that governs everything we create and enjoy for the sake of love and passion, and just for the sake of creation. So things like art, romance, performance, hobbies, children are all governed by the fifth house. So when Jupiter, the planet of expansion and blessings, lands here, either natally or by transit, it's like you've been handed the Willy Wonka golden ticket to live more fully and be more joyful and heart-centered in everything you do. So it's about allowing yourself to create without apology and to experience life with the kind of enthusiasm that makes the experience of living life even more vivid and enjoyable. Now, if you were born with Jupiter in the fifth house, your natural state is one of playfulness and charisma. You most likely have a very strong creative gift, whether that's writing, music, art, acting, or anything where personal expression takes center stage. There tends to be something people find magnetic about you, and maybe they can't quite put their finger on it, but it's there. People are often drawn to your lightheartedness, your optimism, or your ability to find fun, even in life's most mundane moments. You uplift others around you, naturally. And romance tends to be a big part of your story. And you likely approach love with open arms and a big heart. You have a romantic belief in possibilities. And when it comes down to it, you're someone who loves to be in love. And when you're performing your art or executing and doing your art or in love or, in the midst of a romance, it just, you become immersed in it and it lights you up. Another way this manifests is children playing a very significant role in your life. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or someone who just naturally connects with younger generations. You likely have a knack for bringing joy to others and may feel most alive when you're inspiring or encouraging those around you. This placement also blesses risk taking in the best possible way. You may find that when you do follow your heart or take a leap in love or even just start a creative project, things tend to align more easily than expected or more easily for you than it typically does other people. However, the shadow side of Jupiter here can also manifest as overindulgence. So, too much romantic idealism, too much drama, too much pleasure seeking without a truly defined purpose attached to it. The key is learning to channel your joy into something meaningful. If you do that, then you can unlock the full potential of this placement. When Jupiter transits your fifth house, it's a time when you're being encouraged to find your joy again, right? Experience playfulness and fun that doesn't necessarily have to have a logical, mature, rational purpose attached to it. It's fun for the sake of fun. And this transit often brings a wave of inspiration, creative momentum, or even romance. It's a time when you might launch a passion project or rediscover your artistic voice or start something that feels very aligned with your inner child's dreams. I'm not going to lie, people that have Jupiter transiting the fifth house, can very easily find themselves in romantic entanglements. And that can be positive or negative. But you could fall in love at this time. Or if you're in an existing relationship already, you can fall back in love. And the energy is very fertile in every sense of the word. So for some, this transit literally brings pregnancy or the birth of their child. For others, it could mark the birth of some other form of creative expression, whether that be a book or a business or painting or a performance, anything that is an expression of creativity and joy can be birthed at this time. Additionally, visibility tends to increase at this time as well. So you might be invited to speak or to put your work in front of larger audiences. And because you're more magnetic and more likely, to engage with those around you in a positive and engaging, joyful way, it's also a time that you're more often recognized for your talents. But as we've discussed, Jupiter will also amplify wherever your energy is going. So if you're pouring yourself into people pleasing or seeking validation or into dramatic highs and lows, this transit can also exaggerate those tendencies too. That's why it's very important to anchor yourself and your joy in the authenticity of what you feel is right, what brings you happiness. And to create for yourself, not just for the applause or for validation, but for yourself, for the love of creating itself. Ultimately, Jupiter in the fifth house is an invitation to fall in love with life again. So whether this energy is with you from birth or showing up as a transit and just, a 1-year season of expansion in this area, it is going to ask you to express your truth boldly and embrace what makes you happy and lights you up. Because and people I think need to remember this in general. Like joy it's not a luxury. Like it's a necessity in life. Um, so when you give yourself permission to play and to create and to ultimately love without fear, you become a living, breathing embodiment of what it means to lead with the heart. And that's very contagious and very much needed in the world. So I would say it's a great placement. And it's also a very exciting and joyful and fun transit as well. So certainly a positive one. Okay, let's dive into Jupiter in the sixth house. So the sixth house is the house of service, structure, health, and work. Jupiter in the sixth is where expansion meets discipline, where growth doesn't come from grand gestures, but from the everyday commitment to show up, serve, and improve. This house governs routines. It's about work ethic, your physical health, the daily habits we all engage in, and how you manage your responsibility. It's sort of like the engine room of your life. So when Jupiter moves through this space, whether natally or by transit, it's going to ask you to elevate the small things and turn them into sources of meaning and even abundance. Now, if you were born with Jupiter in the sixth house, you likely have a naturally inclination toward purposeful work and practical service. There's often a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from being useful, from supporting others in ways that genuinely help their lives run smoother, or just volunteering your time and helping people make the most of their daily routines and things of that sort. So whether you're helping to mentor a coworker or leading a wellness group, or just simply tending to the details of your own life, you're going to be someone who brings a sense of wisdom, Jupiter, to the mundane, the sixth house. So you may even be a behind the scenes person, someone whose contributions may not always be visible or flashy, but are very vital nonetheless. And people with this placement often find that work environments bring them luck or growth, either through good coworkers, helpful bosses or mentors, or just the development of job roles that open new doors for them. People with this placement tend to thrive in the healing professions or the wellness fields. They make excellent coaches or teachers. Anything that blends practicality with service, they thrive in. They also tend to have a natural resilience around their health in general. Even if these people face challenges around health, they tend to bounce back quickly and stronger, and have a natural ability to gain insight into how to care for their body in a more holistic way after the fact. However, Jupiter does amplify whatever it is it touches. So if your daily life is chaotic, or you have a schedule or a routine that's just unsustainable, or the work that you do every day is based on people pleasing, then this can be a placement that will magnify burnout. It could lead to overworking and, tendencies of overcommitment. You may just take on too much thinking you can handle it all, only to realize that real growth requires structures and boundaries and rest. The key here is to consciously build systems that will support you instead of drain you. You're meant to serve, yes, but not at the cost of your own wellness. Now, when Jupiter transits the sixth house, it's a time to elevate your habits, elevate your work life, and your relationship with health and service. This isn't the most glamorous transit, right? It's not Jupiter through the 10th where your career takes off, or Jupiter through the 2nd where you get that big raise, or Jupiter through the 5th where maybe you have a child or become pregnant. But it is one of the most productive and transformative ones if it's used well. So, because the sixth house pertains to work, it may be a time where you receive a new job offer or take on more responsibility, or you may just feel like your current role, is starting to expand and grow in its scope. Because Jupiter is the planet of positivity and wisdom, you could also feel a great sense of optimism around your work at this time. You might feel like you're enjoying what you do more, or maybe you're feeling more appreciated around the workplace. And maybe you're being inspired to turn what felt like a day-to-day grind into something that is still busy, but maybe feels more purposeful in how you live it. Now, because the sixth house is also pertaining to health, health also becomes a major focus when Jupiter transits the sixth house. It might be a time where you revamp your routine or commit to a regular exercise regimen. I've also seen this as a time where people tend to explore new non-traditional healing modalities or simply feel more motivated to treat their body with care and treat their body like a temple. Jupiter is going to encourage you to think holistically here, not just how do I look on a superficial level, but also how do I feel, right? Like what's going on, and what can support my long-term vitality and set me up for success within my daily routines and daily health routines for the long term. You might also find that teachers or guides can help upgrade your daily life or routines at this time, whether that's through coaching or therapy or spiritual disciplines. Jupiter is guru, and it's also a time where these individuals tend to manifest within your life. So it's a great time to get into all of that and refine your schedule and really begin to simplify things so you can create a long-term sustainable system that has room for growth in the future. Now, this transit is about realizing that the most expansive life often begins with the smallest steps. As you said, this isn't the most glamorous transit, but consistent effort, structure, service, these things are important, and they are sacred as well in their own way. You're being called on to build something that's going to support your future self, even if it doesn't feel fun or flashy at this time. So even if it's just learning to manage your time better, or improving your diet, or just a shift in how you approach your day-to-day work or job, Jupiter here is going to remind you that small progress compounds. So if you show up with intention, you can really be amazed about how far these efforts are going to take you over a long enough timeline with Jupiter here. And in the end, Jupiter in the sixth house, whether natal or by transit, is a reminder that true growth doesn't have to be dramatic or otherworldly. Sometimes it happens in the rhythm of a simple morning routine, or a decision to just begin caring for your body in small, incremental, measurable ways. It's a placement that turns discipline into tangible results that are going to benefit you long term. So if you have Jupiter going through the sixth or Jupiter natally, please, drop a comment in the section below. We'd love to hear about your experience. Okay, Jupiter in the seventh. Now we're stepping into the realm of relationships and union. Any partnerships that are governed with a contract. So Jupiter in the seventh house is where your greatest growth comes not from going at it alone, but through the people you connect with. Other people play an enormously important role in your life with this placement. That's your spouses, your partners, your allies, collaborators, and even your challengers. The seventh house governs committed one-on-one relationships, including marriage, business partnerships, contracts, and the people who act as a mirror to your own identity. So when Jupiter, the planet of expansion, wisdom, and blessings, lands here, whether by birth or by transit, it opens the door to deeper, more meaningful connections that will elevate your life in very powerful ways. If you were born with Jupiter in the seventh, relationships are likely a major source of growth throughout your entire life. You may attract generous, wise, or very worldly partners, people who are placed in your life to expand your worldview. They bring you luck or serve as mentors, even if it is in disguise, right? Like, even if it's not like abundantly apparent that's the role that they're playing. People are in your life for a reason and to help guide you. And these connections often arrive through romance, but it can also be through business deals or legal matters. In some instances, it can be a long-term friendship that plays this role. And you're someone who often believes in the power of partnership, and you thrive when someone is by your side to share the journey with, or to collaborate with and build something meaningful together. You likely have a natural ability to bring optimism and diplomacy into all of your relationships. This is Jupiter's influence. And others may naturally seek you out for guidance or emotional support, even if they don't consciously know why. And you probably often find that you're the one smoothing things over or creating harmony in your closest connections. This placement will also support careers that revolve around one-on-one work. So that's like therapy or law, coaching, anything that involves negotiation or helping people find balance. This placement tends to promote. And over time, you may come to see relationships not as distractions or side plots, but as the main vehicle for self-discovery and growth in your life. However, Jupiter's expansive nature can also bring challenges here. You may idealize your partners or put them on a pedestal or just depend too heavily on them for emotional validation. At times, you might fear being alone and stay in relationships longer than you should or longer than is necessary because of that fear, or because you just believe that they're part of your path and part of your story because they've always been there. Sometimes Jupiter can bring larger than life partners, right? I've seen this a lot in business relationships with individuals, where people come in to challenge your beliefs or to push you to grow by showing you where you're either still unhealed or there's still room to grow. And these dynamics are going to show up over and over again in your life. And they aren't meant to limit you. In fact, they're here to stretch you. And it's through them you find your growth. Now, when Jupiter transits the seventh house, a lot of the similar themes come up. It can be a time when your relationship landscape begins to shift and expand in dramatic ways. This is often one of the most significant and even beneficial times for love or forming new partnerships or business connections. You might even meet someone during this 12-month transit who feels like a soulmate. Or if you're with somebody already, it can be a time where you take that existing relationship to the next level, such as marriage or getting engaged, or just some form of deeper emotional intimacy. Now, in business partnerships, it could be a time where you just find yourself attracting powerful mentors or new engaging and powerful collaborators or new clients who are there to help you grow and succeed. If you have any legal matters or contracts at this time, with Jupiter here, they're more than likely to go in your favor. And new agreements entered into at this time often lead to long-term gains because of Jupiter's influence. However, this transit isn't just about meeting the one in terms of like marriage or romance. It's really about transforming your entire perspective on what partnership means to you. It can be a time where you begin to crave relationships that are more aligned with your values, whether that's intellectually, spiritually, or philosophically. And you might explore new dynamics in your love life. Um, it can be a time where you're called on to balance independence with intimacy. Again, the seventh house is the natural home of Libra, the scales. And even short term connections during this transit can leave a lasting mark and teach you something that you'll find essential for the future about trust or fairness or just reciprocity. Now, as always with Jupiter, the key is alignment. This transit expands what's already present. So, if you're already grounded in your own self worth, it can attract really supportive and beautiful relationships. But if you're avoiding or have been avoiding the inner work, or you're looking for someone to, quote, complete you, it can amplify themes of idealization or even codependency. Ultimately, Jupiter wants you to experience the joy of connection, but he wants you to grow through it, to become more of who you truly are through that reflection that others offer. In the end, Jupiter in the seventh is a profound reminder that we don't grow in isolation. So, whether you're born with this placement or moving through it now in transit, the invitation is to open your heart, to learn from what is mirrored back to you through the other, and to let your partnerships become the ground for expansion or even healing. The right people will not only walk beside you in life, but they're going to help you become the highest version of yourself. And that is ultimately what Jupiter is trying to accomplish here. Okay, Jupiter in the eighth house. Now, here we're entering one of the most intense, mystical, and even transformational zones of the chart. With Jupiter in the eighth, this placement brings growth through intensity, transformation, and surrender. You have to remember, the eighth house is the natural home of Scorpio. So, Jupiter here is one of the most complex and powerful placements you could have in the chart. It's where expansion doesn't come from what's easy or even visible, because Scorpio is beneath the surface, but from what's hidden, deep, and oftentimes experienced as uncomfortable. The eighth house governs intimacy, shared finances, death, rebirth, psychological healing, spirituality, and the mysteries of life and death. So when Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, expansion, and opportunity, enters this space, it asks you to grow by facing what others might typically avoid. And you're here to discover abundance through the process of letting go. If you were born with Jupiter in the eighth house, you have an innate pull towards life's deeper dimensions. You're not content with just surface level answers or shallow experiences. You have a yearning to dive deep into the real, raw, and profoundness of life or any subject matter that you're into or tackling. You may be drawn to themes of mysticism, psychology, trauma healing, spiritual studies, or even astrology. Anything to help explain the forces that are work beneath the surface, right? Beneath the surface of life. There's often a natural gift for transformation with this placement, and you're someone who can move through loss, pain, or even crisis and emerge with greater strength and power in the end. People with this placement tend to go through many deaths and rebirths within life, right? Metaphorically. Because the eighth house rules other people's money, this placement can also bring financial blessings through other people, whether it's a partner's income or business collaborations, investments, or inheritance. And you may be particularly skilled at managing your shared resources or at least understanding the energetic flow of money, especially when it's tied to deeper trust or emotional bonds. People with this placement tend to have careers in financing, or finance, counseling, healing, the occult, or very much into research in some form or fashion. They tend to have a quiet magnetism to them, an almost aura that is indicative of mystery or some depth that draws others to them or to confide in them or simply seek support during transformative times in their life from you. But Jupiter also amplifies whatever it touches. And in the eighth house, that means power dynamics, trust issues, and emotional entanglements can become more pronounced if they aren't being addressed. So you might attract relationships or experiences that force you to confront your fears around control, loss, vulnerability, or even sexuality. At times, there can be a tendency to avoid the full intensity of your emotions because they run so deep, they're overwhelming, and you resort to intellectualizing them. Or conversely, you can feel yourself becoming all consumed by them without a clear path for emotional release. The key here is surrender. And it's not surrendering to others, but surrendering to the process of evolution itself. Now, when Jupiter transits the eighth house, it's a little different. It is said to bring about situations that prompt deep transformation and growth. So this isn't, if you couldn't guess it already, a quote, light and easy chapter. It's one of the more powerful transits, but ideal and, very helpful in terms of healing or finding emotional breakthroughs or moments for emotional renewal. It's a time where you might find yourself entering into deeper emotional bonds or exploring spirituality or engaging in therapeutic work more seriously. It could also be a time of revisiting past wounds, not to mire in them, but to release them. It's a time to do the shadow work, especially if you have any type of generational or ancestral healing that needs to take place, and ultimately reclaiming the parts of yourself that were once hidden or disowned because of, these deep emotional scars that you may carry. Now, from a financial perspective, this transit may bring access to shared wealth. So that could come through taxes or insurance or grants. It could also be a time where you secure a loan or, I'm even sorry to say, receive an inheritance, because the eighth house is other people's money and has also themes of death and rebirth. So you might merge assets with another partner at this time or, collaborate on a new business venture with an individual as well. But beyond material gains, the true wealth of this transit lies in the ability or the opportunity to strip away what no longer is serving you. It's a time for clearing out any energetic baggage that you've been carrying and shedding any outdated toxic patterns that you've been holding on to. It's about allowing yourself to be reborn in a more empowered and integrated version of yourself through Jupiter's presence. Now, in intimate relationships, Jupiter here will bring up themes of vulnerability as well as trust. You may be asked to reveal any hidden fears or hidden truths that you've been carrying, and, or even to merge with another on a spiritual or emotional level. It can be a transit that brings a profound closeness with another, or conversely highlight where true intimacy is missing in a partnership. Either way, Jupiter's goal here is not comfort but growth. And in the 8th house, growth typically happens through pain and when you face what you've been avoiding. And Jupiter wants you to face this to allow what needs to end and fall away. Ultimately, Jupiter in the 8th house, whether natally or by transit, is about transformation through truth. It's a reminder that real abundance comes not from clinging to what is safe, but to surrendering to the process of becoming. What you lose during this time may feel significant. However, what you gain is going to be far more lasting. And ultimately, what Jupiter wants you to gain is your own sense of power, sense of healing, and really a deep trust in your own capacity. Jupiter here is to remind you that you were made for more, but first, you have to let go of what's no longer you. So if anybody has this placement natally or has gone through this transit, please drop a comment below and let us know what your personal experience was like. I think it may be very interesting or at a minimal, helpful to others. Okay, Jupiter in the 9th house. Now we're stepping into Jupiter's home court. This is a placement of soul alignment, where the planet of expansion, truth, and wisdom returns to its natural domain. The 9th house governs higher education, long-distance travel, philosophy, publishing, and the pursuit of spiritual or intellectual meaning. It's the part of the chart that asks life's big questions, such as, why are we here? What do I believe in? What's my purpose? And when Jupiter enters this space, either by birth or transit, it tends to supercharge your desire to explore or elevate your perspective on the world. Now, if you were born with Jupiter in the 9th house, you are a lifelong seeker. You crave knowledge, but not just for the sake of information. You crave it to uncover the deeper truths about existence itself. There's a natural draw towards subjects like spirituality, law, religion, ethics. And you may very well be an avid traveler and someone who loves traveling. You're always dreaming of a trip to a new distant place or learning a new foreign language. You're someone who finds transformation through those travels, as well as books, interactions with your teachers or gurus, or just late night philosophical conversations. You're likely to be open-minded, optimistic, and inspiring, someone who encourages others to look beyond the limits of their current circumstances. This placement is often said to bring blessings, but only when you follow your inner truth. So you may find that when you listen to your intuition or pursue what feels meaningful to you, whether it's an academic goal or a spiritual calling, that doors tend to open up for you. People with this placement thrive in any careers related to teaching, law, writing, ministry, or really any path that allows you to guide others through some form of knowledge or belief system. There's a sense that your life expands the more you trust in something bigger than yourself. But, like all Jupiter placements, this one is not without its challenges. You may be someone who wrestles with overconfidence in your beliefs, or fall into the trap of thinking your way is the only way. Sometimes Jupiter in the ninth can manifest as dogma, right? Clinging to a single worldview without ever questioning it. Or, perhaps worse, spiritual bypassing, where these lofty ideals are used to avoid the reality around you. The key here is humility. You have to recognize that even as you seek truth, there's always more to learn. There's more to unlearn and learn again. There's always room for growth. It's Jupiter. Now, by transit, it's very similar themes, a little different. When Jupiter transits the ninth house, it often kicks off and launches a period of profound expansion, but in realms of the mental, the spiritual, and oftentimes geographical as well. So it's a time when you're being nudged out of your familiar comfort zone and into the unknown in some form or fashion. You might feel called to travel, not local travel, but travel abroad to foreign countries, or to return to school, or dive into a spiritual study at this time. You'll likely feel called to take some form or leap of faith that is going to shift your entire sense of direction in life. Oftentimes, this is a period when people meet their teachers or gurus or guides, or they just encounter thought leaders in general, and that doesn't have to be in person. It can be through a YouTube channel or through a book, who change your perspective, right? You may come across an idea or philosophy that drastically alters your path in life completely during this transit. Now, this transit can also amplify your desire to share what you know. So you might feel the urge to write a book, to start a podcast, to teach a course, or even engage in public speaking about something that you're passionate about, but it would have to be something that you've actually lived and learned with real world experience. Publishing, media, and international connections are often themes that are highlighted now. So the more you follow your curiosity and say yes to these themes of expansion, the more opportunities will appear in front of you. And they may not feel like it in the moment, but when you look back years later, they'll often seem guided or synchronistic in nature, like it was meant. You were meant to meet that individual, something of that sort. So this is certainly not a time to play small. Jupiter in the ninth is going to encourage you to think big, to trust your inner compass, and pursue the version of higher truth that resonates with you with real purpose and passion. You just have to make sure that you let your beliefs evolve as your experiences deepen. Don't get trapped in dogma. The more you stretch beyond your comfort zone, the more you'll find meaning in places or perspectives that you never expected. So whether natal or transiting, Jupiter in the ninth is a very powerful transit, and it really serves as a powerful reminder that life is a journey of discovery. It calls you to be a student of the world, right? And what is a student? They're curious, they're brave, they're willing to follow the signs towards something greater than themselves. And these are all the themes that come up at this time. It's an invitation to live life with a vision and to trust in the wisdom that comes from that exploration. So the world is always ready to teach you something new. And when Jupiter is here natally or by transit, it's a time for you to go looking for that. So If anybody has this placement or has experienced the transit, please, drop a comment below and let everyone know what that experience was like for you. I think it would be incredibly helpful for individuals. Okay, now Jupiter transiting the part of the house that everybody gets excited for, Jupiter in the 10th. So, the 10th house is the most visible and highest point in the chart. And this is where Jupiter is going to shine a spotlight on your career, your legacy, and ultimately your public image in the world. This is where your personal potential meets the world around you. The 10th house governs your career. It's about leadership, it's your reputation, and ultimately the legacy that each of us leave behind in the world. It represents how we're seen in the eyes of the world and the path that we take to build something lasting. So when Jupiter, the planet of expansion, purpose, and opportunity, lands here, either natally or by transit, it brings the momentum to rise. It bestows, leadership qualities and the vision to shape your life into something greater than yourself. Now, if you're born with Jupiter in the 10th, you are meant to be seen. No two ways about it. There's something about your energy that attracts attention in the professional sphere. People easily recognize your potential. You tend to carry yourself with integrity and have the ability to inspire those around you effortlessly. You may have been very ambitious from a young age or felt a strong inner desire or drive to do something meaningful in the world and to make a difference. Whether that be dreams of building a business or leading a movement or simply teaching and guiding others with your wisdom, Jupiter here would support those big dreams. You're someone who tends to think in terms of impact, how your work can not only succeed, but ultimately uplift others and leave a mark that matters. So this placement often blesses you with an abundance of career opportunities, especially when you pursue a path that's aligned with your deeper calling. You may naturally attract powerful mentors or bosses, or just step into leadership roles earlier and more easily than other people. Fields like law, business, publishing, politics, even media, often come with success under this placement, especially if they allow you to share a meaningful message or help elevate others. You tend to thrive when you're working towards a bigger goal or a bigger mission that's not just about you or chasing status. These are all very beneficial and auspicious, themes that arise with Jupiter in the 10th. But Jupiter here also comes with some caution. Some negative ways that this could play out is the desire to succeed can become overwhelming, and you may put too much pressure on yourself to perform, to prove your worth through accomplishment and accolades, and just achieve in general. There's a risk of people becoming workaholics with this placement, overworking, chasing job titles, and ultimately attaching their identity much too tightly to what they do in the world professionally. If success comes very quickly, which it can with this placement, you have to be on guard so that the ego does not inflate, because that's not what Jupiter is about. The lesson is really to stay connected to the why behind your ambition, because true leadership isn't about the spotlight, and Jupiter wants you to experience this, but through the lens of authenticity and service. But natally, Jupiter in the 10th house is phenomenal. I typically see, as long as it's not afflicted by any malefics, very successful careers. Great heights, leadership roles in abundance from very early on in their career. And with that comes the money as well. So very, very good placement natally. Now, when Jupiter transits your 10th house, similar themes emerge. It's going to be a very powerful chapter of professional expansion. When you see this transit coming, you should prepare for it and recognize this is your moment to step up. This is when promotions come, when recognition comes. It's a time of career breakthroughs and refreshed or new visibility in the workplace that ultimately changes your career trajectory. People start to notice your talents at this time. And you may notice that you're being offered opportunities left and right, whether that's to lead, to take a promotion, to speak, or to just grow something that you've been nurturing for years. The moment is now. It's a time when you could see a lot of success in your field, where you become very prominent in your field, or where you could feel called to actually go after a long-held dream job, right? So if you're not in the industry that you've dreamt about or feels aligned with your value system internally, it can be a time that prompts you to pivot to a different career path and go after that dream job. Oftentimes in a new venture of your own from an entrepreneurship perspective. So this transit also brings very supportive bosses or mentors or gurus who help you get to the next level. If you felt stuck, this transit often begins to open doors to align with your long-term goals. But Jupiter asks that you're brave enough to walk through them. And what that means is prompting you to think bigger about what you're building and to step into your authority with wisdom and not fear. In general, this is a great time, even to redefine or refine what success means to you. You could be pulled towards work at this time that better reflects your beliefs, or feel the need to pivot into a more purposeful path. While this transit can bring great external success and money, its deeper lesson is about integrity and alignment, right? So who are you when nobody's looking? What do you want to be known for? Jupiter in the 10th will reward you with that, but only if you lead from truth and not just pure selfish ambition. In the end, Jupiter in the 10th, whether natal or by transit, is a great placement. It's a call to rise to your potential and make your mark in the world. And he's going to give you the power to do just that. It's about turning your dreams into reality, but a reality that actively contributes to serving others while simultaneously fulfilling your own personal goals. Jupiter here reminds you are not meant to play small. This is a placement of purpose. And success isn't just about what you accomplish, but why you're accomplishing it and the legacy that you're leaving behind. So if you have this placement or have recently experienced this transit, please, let us know how it unfolded for you in the comments below. I think people, would greatly benefit hearing about that if they have this coming up for them. Okay, now we're moving into one of Jupiter's most visionary placements, the 11th house, where personal growth meets collective impact, right? The natural house of Aquarius. This is the part of the chart that governs your hopes for the future, your social networks, friendships, community involvement, and long-term vision. It's the house of innovation and impact, where what you believe becomes something you build with others. Now, when Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, growth, and higher truth, lands here, either in your natal chart or by transit, your potential for dreaming big and influencing the greater good is amplified in ways that are inspirational, but also extremely tangible. So if you were born with Jupiter in the 11th house, you're someone who thrives when surrounded by like minded people and when you're working towards a shared vision or purpose. You crave connection, not just for the sake of companionship, but for collaboration. And you likely attract a very wide and oftentimes very diverse circle of friends. You'll have friends from and allies from different cultures, different belief systems, different backgrounds, social castes, anything. And you're drawn to causes that feel bigger than yourself. And you often have a strong sense of social or even spiritual responsibility, whether it's activism, education, environmentalism, creative or technological innovation. You're here to help shape the future, but not in isolation, through a group component with others. If you have this placement natally, you feel most alive when you're building something that uplifts others. Some examples of this are nonprofits, community platforms, or even just an online presence that spreads knowledge and hope, like a YouTube channel or an Instagram account. You're someone who has a natural gift for networking and may find that doors open when you align with the right people. Collaborations often bring success for you. You are not the go-it-alone type of individual. And group projects can easily turn into movements when you're the leader or at the helm of them. You may also be seen as someone who brings a vision or optimistic wisdom to any team dynamic that they're a part of. However, the shadow side of Jupiter in the 11th is ungrounded idealism. So your visions may be so big that they feel impossible to manifest or make a reality. Or you may struggle with scattering your energy across too many causes or across too many networks or social circles. Not every community is the right fit, and not every collaboration needs to take flight. So learning to discern between the different partnerships in terms of which one is right for your path and which one is just a draining distraction is going to be key for you. Your gift is to dream big while at the same time acting practically. Now, when Jupiter transits the 11th house, it activates a 1-year season of social expansion. This is often a time when your network grows rapidly, whether through social media, followers, through professional communities or spiritual circles, even friendship groups. The people around you are just going to multiply. And you're going to find new people enter your life at this time to support you or inspire you. You're going to have pivotal new allies that are just coming into your life with the purpose of helping you reach your goals. So it's a great time to pursue new dreams or launch new platforms that you may have been keeping on the back burner. Jupiter here is handing you a bigger microphone and asking you to use your voice for something meaningful. This transit also brings a renewed clarity and excitement around your long-term goals. So you might finally get the courage to pursue a mission that's been tugging at your heart, or pursue and receive the funding or support systems to make that dream real. There's a sense that the world around you and the universe is somehow conspiring to help you create not just success, but real impact through your initiatives. You may also feel more called to align with communities that, reflect your values at this time. So if you're with groups or causes that maybe you don't feel completely aligned with, When Jupiter goes through this part of your chart, you are going to be called on to align with groups that truly reflect what you believe, especially if those groups are rooted in spirituality or any type of justice. However, just like its natural expression, Jupiter can bring too many ideas or too many invitations or too many connections or too much information. Jupiter's about growth and expansion, and sometimes expansion left unchecked is no longer a positive. So the key is to focus on what truly aligns with your higher vision at this time. You have 12 months to maximize Jupiter's presence in this part of the chart. And he's going to help you recognize that saying yes to everything ultimately dilutes your power and your vision. You're better off being selective with a few things, because if you try to be everything to everybody, you're going to be nothing to everybody. Jupiter wants to help you build something that's lasting, but it will need for you to stay grounded and discerning in all of your collaborations. So that's the negative side, but Jupiter here is clearly outweighed in the positive end of the spectrum. In the end, Jupiter in the 11th is a beautiful reminder that you're not meant to go it alone, and that you are meant to inspire, unite, and elevate others with your vision for the future. So while Jupiter is here, it's time to find your people, build your mission, and build that dream that serves something greater than you. Okay, Jupiter in the 12th house. So now we enter the most elusive, mystical, and spiritually expansive zone of the zodiac, the 12th house, where Jupiter becomes less about outer growth and more about inner growth and ultimate liberation. So Jupiter in the 12th is a journey into the unseen realms. The 12th house is a place of the subconscious, the dreams, your intuition. It's a place of solitude, healing, and ultimately the dissolving of ego. Jupiter here is a placement that is indicative of quiet blessings and deep spiritual growth, and bestows divine protection that is going to work behind the scenes rather than the spotlight. Now, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, wisdom, grace, and when it moves into this space, whether natally or by transit, the growth it offers is sacred and profoundly transformative, but is often subtle as well. If you were born with Jupiter in the 12th, you likely carry a kind of spiritual insulation. There's an unseen layer of protection that's hard to explain, but at the same time is very real and would be something that you're very cognizant and aware of. Many with this placement speak of a guardian angel energy or an inner sense that they're being watched over or protected even when they're going through the darkest moments in their life. If you have this placement, you are likely very naturally intuitive, and probably drawn to mysticism, right? You're going to be somebody that loves their dream world, is interested in meditation, interested in learning about spiritual philosophies or astrology. There's often a quiet knowing with a Jupiter in the 12th house person. They have an ability to tap into something that's larger than themselves, and they use that to guide their path, consciously and sometimes unconsciously as well. They're a person that likely feels most at peace in solitude when they're alone, or even in service to others, especially those who are overlooked or forgotten, right? 12th house. So healing, counseling, spiritual work, or even creative endeavors that are done in private are deeply fulfilling to these individuals. They have a tendency to have good luck in the sense of divine timing, right? Like, this is the type of person that just when they need it, a door is going to open up for them. Or just as they need some help, they're going to receive some support that comes in from some unknown or unlikely source. And this is Jupiter working invisibly on your behalf. That said, Jupiter here can also magnify the unconscious, both the positive side as well as the shadow side. So you could be someone who struggles with energetic overwhelm or escapist tendencies or an urge to check out of reality when life starts to feel too heavy. This placement can heighten your empathy, but can also blur the boundaries and lead you to absorb more than is healthy from an energetic perspective. Like, this person may be someone that, just like a real world example, goes out to a party, is around a bunch of people, and absorbs a lot of energy around them, and then needs to go and isolate in seclusion to sort of decompress and shed those energies, because the boundaries are blurred and they're so empathetic that they're absorbing everything around them. However, when integrated, Jupiter in the 12th becomes a very powerful guide for spirituality and spiritual mastery. Now, Jupiter transiting the 12th is a little bit of a different flavor, although a lot of the same themes emerge. It marks the final chapter of this 12-year cycle of Jupiter, right? So it's often a time to reflect, release what's no longer true to them, and then renew. It's not a transit of external wins like Jupiter in the 10th or flashy breakthroughs. It's more like a retreat. And you're being asked to slow down and reconnect with yourself and to clear any residue karmically that might be weighing you down, because this transit is a period of preparation. It's where you're being isolated and the soul is being realigned to its next mission. And it's a time where the outer world could go quiet, but inside there are deep shifts that are taking place in a very real manner. It can be a time where you just feel called to meditate more, to spend more time in nature, or to travel to spiritual places like an ashram, or just in general spend more time alone. You may self-isolate. It can be a time where you escape into your dream world and dreams in general become more vivid. It's always a transit that is great for dream journaling and keeping a notebook beside your bed so that when you wake up, you can scribble down what you experienced before it floats away. It can also be a time where old emotional patterns can resurface to be healed and released. And you may discover that there are either addictive or self-sabotaging behaviors that were hiding in plain sight. Maybe they've been apparent to others, but not to yourself, right? You can't see the 12th house from the first house. So it could be a time to face those and let them go. And through all of this, there's often a feeling of being divinely assisted, as if something unseen is holding your hand or gently guiding you through this time period. So it can be a time of hidden blessings where you get unexpected help or intuitive downloads or spiritual guidance in some subtle or even profound way. I would say if you're a creative, this can be a really inspired period, right? Like, whether it's poetry or music or you're a painter, like that type of energy can really flow at this time. Um, the challenge during this transit is ultimately learning to trust what you cannot see. And this is going to depend on the type of person you are in general, how difficult or not difficult this would be. But you may not have clear answers or obvious success markers at this time, but know that Jupiter is working to expand your inner life at this time. He is cleaning and cleansing your energetic field and making space for the next evolution, the next 12-year path, right? So this is the cocoon phase before the butterfly emerges. It's the pause before the rebirth of when Jupiter crosses your ascendant and then transits your first house. So I would say ultimately Jupiter in the 12th, whether natal or transiting, is an invitation to surrender. So you have to let go of the control and quiet your mind and just trust in the flow of the universe and the divine, right? That there is something to all of this. It's a reminder that the greatest growth doesn't always happen when you're the busiest or in the spotlight. In fact, the inverse is actually much more often true. And the quiet moments are the ones where you realize that you're never alone. And, you know, even when you're in the dark, right, there's light gathering on the horizon. So I personally have had this transit and I find it incredibly, I don't want to say enjoyable because it's not the right word, but it's fulfilling in its own unique way. As long as you consciously are aware and tap into what Jupiter is trying to do during this time period. So if you have Jupiter in the 12th natally, or you are experiencing or have experienced this transit, please drop a comment below and share what you went through. I think others will find it interesting and possibly helpful. In closing, remember, Jupiter isn't just the planet of luck, it's the planet of faith. It expands whatever it touches, guiding you to grow, to trust, and to believe in the possibility of more. So whether Jupiter shows up in your chart as a blessing, a challenge, or even a calling, its presence is always an invitation. It's asking you to dream bigger, live wiser and more aligned with your internal self, and align with your soul's highest potential. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate you spending part of your day here, and if you found this helpful, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss another upload. And if you're ever looking for deeper insight into how Jupiter or any other planet is working within your birth chart, or how upcoming transits could impact your career, relationships, or spiritual path, I offer readings, and you can find all the booking details in the description box below. Thanks again for being here, and I will see you in the next video.